With the WINN FM News, I am Kevin Brown.
And I am Yolana Weeks.
Our top stories. Questions mount concerning recent scandal brought forth by St. Vincent and the Grenadines Prime Minister over ECCB Governor's residence. St. Kitts and Nevis foresee economic repercussions from U.S. trade wars.
The People's Action Movement calls for an independent investigation into East Coast housing development scheme.
Trade wars escalate inflation concerns in St. Kitts and Nevis and the Caribbean region. Government quarry modernization set to revolutionize construction sector in St. Kitts and Nevis. ECCB governor's leadership questioned. OECS immigration ministers discuss free movement protocols. Internationally, EU leaders talk defense spending surge after US cut Ukraine aid. Now, the details. Amidst growing concerns over economic challenges in the Eastern Caribbean, St. Vincent and the Grenadines Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves has voiced strong criticism against the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, ECCB, for spending $22 million on an official residence for its governor, labeling the expenditure a scandal. Gonsalves expressed his strong outrage over the ECCB's decision to allocate such a substantial amount for the governor's residence in a strongly worded letter. During the March 6, 2025 Prime Minister's press conference, Prime Minister Drew announced that this matter is outside the purview of the St. Kitts and Nevis government.
So let me say, this does not come under the purview of the St. Kitts Nevis federal government. It's an entity that involves all of these governments. So I just want to put that out. With respect to what you speak about, with respect to the residents, let me say first of all that the central bank, the Monetary Council, has a chairperson. The initial chairperson, Webster, as you know, it has now been passed on to another country, I think is Antigua at this particular time, because we rotate. And the chairperson for the Monetary Council would, speak to issues during their cycle when those issues come up. And so any decisions made is made collectively with all the countries involved, and not just one country having a say with respect. As we know, this is an ongoing discussion in the public. I can say that all information with respect to this is being sought, and I think that the central bank, in its prudence, will make sure that the information is collected and properly presented to the people of the region.
Gonsalves, regarding the nearly completed 10,000 square foot residence, argues that the governor's, quote, lavish spending is both irresponsible and out of touch with the economic struggles faced by the people of the region, including rising food prices and increasing poverty, end quote. He emphasized that, quote, such opulence is unacceptable, particularly during a time of economic hardship in St. Kitts and Nevis and across the region, end quote. Since the letter began circulating on social media, Governor Antoine remained silent. The bank has stated that it has no comment at this time. The situation has stirred discontent across much of the ECCU. The developments are ongoing and further information will be provided as it becomes available. The Right Honorable Dr. Denzel Llewellyn Douglas, Minister of Foreign Affairs, International Trade, Industry and Commerce, Consumer Affairs, Economic Development and Investment, has articulated concerns regarding the potential adverse effects of ongoing trade wars initiated by the United States on the economy of St. Kitts and Nevis. Speaking at the Prime Minister's press conference with the Cabinet Ministers on March 6th, Dr. Douglas addressed the implications of these trade conflicts involving key U.S. allies and economic powers, including Canada, Mexico, and China. Dr. Douglas highlighted the historical context of preferential trade agreements between the U.S. and the Caribbean, particularly the Caribbean Basin Initiative established during the Reagan administration.
Over the years, we have been the beneficiary of good trading relationship between the United States of America and the Caribbean, St. Kitts and Nevis included, of course. Remember the Caribbean Basin Initiative, which was established since in the early days of Reagan and other presidents of that nature, and gave us favorable trading conditions with the United States.
He explained that this initiative previously allowed tariff-free entry of goods manufactured in St. Kitts and Nevis into the U.S. market, benefiting the local manufacturing sector. The minister cautioned that the current trade landscape significantly departs from this advantageous past.
That has changed dramatically over the years. And so the effect on St. Kitts and Nevis really will be the effect as a result of the fallout from countries which would have traded with the United States and who in turn we buy goods from.
The trade minister elaborated on the indirect impact, emphasizing the resilience on ports like Miami, St. Thomas, and New York to import goods. With the U.S. imposing increased tariffs, Dr. Douglas anticipates higher prices.
It is expected for us to pay higher prices for the goods that would have been imported through any port or from ports of origin where increased tariffs would have been placed by the announcements made by the President Trump, within 100 days of taking office for a second time in the history of the United States.
Dr. Douglas further pointed out the compounded challenges arising from the COVID-19 pandemic, which has disrupted global supply chains.
Not only will this impact us because of the increase in tariffs, but we have already been impacted because of COVID, where it takes much longer for goods to arrive to our ports, much longer because there has been disruption in the supply trade routes as a result of shortages from COVID. And now we are going to experience, I would think, maybe longer periods for goods to arrive.
These delays, coupled with increased tariffs, are expected to inflate the cost of goods, ultimately affecting the cost of living for citizens of St. Kitts and Nevis.
The cost of these goods would go up, and then, of course, it will impact negatively on the cost of living for our people here in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Despite these concerns, Dr. Douglas acknowledged the global response to the U.S. trade policies, citing Canada's pushback as an example.
The good thing about it is that the entire world is responding to what has been announced by the President of the United States in terms of increased tariffs. We have seen, for example, the pushback from countries like Canada. In fact, as a result, I believe, of Canada's reaction, we've heard only a few nights ago that he has suspended the application of the tariff against, increased tariff against Canadian goods by a month. And maybe that could be extended further because the Canadian government has indicated that its citizens will not be the ones to suffer, but the Americans themselves will suffer. And so that's the way it is.
Regarding the local economy, Dr. Douglas mentioned the electronic assembling parts sector, stating,
"Of course, we still have the electronic assembling parts with a few of the companies that are manufacturing goods that go into the U.S. market. And we are still waiting to see how those tariffs will impact positively or negatively on the cost of goods, depending on what side of the equation you're sitting."
The government is closely monitoring the situation to assess the full impact on the nation's trade and economy.
The federal government's plans to build 2,400 smart homes during its tenure continue to breed concerns in St. Kitts and Nevis. The East Coast Housing Development Housing Scheme was expected to address the country's housing shortage and create jobs, but the $1.52 billion Trinidadian dollars project seems not to be going as initially planned. At a press conference of the ministers of the St. Kitts and Nevis government, Housing Minister Jeffrey Hanley attributed the delay in the construction of homes to challenges on the part of the investor.
As you know, as a country, we engage the East Coast Housing Development in assisting us in delivering some homes. Unfortunately, the 600 homes that we were anticipating, with all of the challenges that we might have been experiencing, not us so much as a government, but the investor, that has caused some delays. These matters are being worked on. And what I said to the Federation is that based on the the contractual arrangement that we would have signed, the AG office, of course, is working on ensuring that the government's interest, which it is protected.
The East Coast Housing Project was presented as an ambitious housing program consisting of newly constructed climate-smart homes with basic appliances inside. But according to Henley, about 140 homes were constructed through the National Housing Corporation. Critics raised the concerns that the first 600 homes, which were to be delivered within 2 years, had not been achieved. But Hanley declared that despite the delay, the government did not lose any money.
We have not lost any money as a government, but we are committed in continuing with our home delivery. There are many investors are sending in proposals, and we are going through these proposals. The new method, the technology that was introduced, it took a longer time in terms of buy-in, but we are working on all of those. So that's where we are right now with the East Coast in particular.
From the outset, the opposition was fierce about the East Coast Housing Development's involvement in the housing program, as opposers consistently regarded the arrangements as a shady deal between the government of St. Kitts and Nevis and the Trinidadian company East Coast Housing Development. The People's Action Movement, in particular, has accused the government of entering into a secret agreement with East Coast Housing and cited concerns about due diligence. Having been updated on the housing scheme and the investors' report of challenges, the opposition party has called for an independent investigation. Quote, "This administration continues to showcase its inexperience and disregard for sound decision-making. It is now imperative that an independent investigation be launched to scrutinize the processes leading to the awarding of this contract. The people of St. Kitts and Nevis deserve answers, and those responsible for any mismanagement or reckless decision-making must be held accountable. Failure to address this matter will only erode public trust further, reinforcing the growing perception that this government prioritizes expedience over competence and secrecy over accountability." Unquote. Despite the delay in the construction of the smart homes, Minister Hanley made it clear that the country's housing program is not devoid of success. He said the government has made a commitment to deliver housing solutions, and the National Housing Corporation will continue with that mandate.
As global trade wars intensify, particularly among the United States and Canada, Mexico, and China, their impact on international pricing structures has prompted concerns regarding inflation in dollar-pegged economies like St. Kitts and Nevis. The inflationary ripple effect has raised questions regarding consumer and business costs and the economic resilience of small import-dependent islands. Dr. Terence Martin, Associate Professor and Director at Winston-Salem State University and host of WINN FM's Money Matters, addressed these concerns in a recent interview. According to Dr. Martin, the Federation is experiencing contrasting inflationary trends.
If we are to look at inflation specifically, inflation has been trending downward, and it would also be downward in St. Kitts and Nevis because our currency is pegged to the US dollar.
Dr. Martin stated, however, he warned of potential short to medium-term implications.
We expect increased import costs from U.S. distributors who would likely raise prices of goods in the Federation, particularly consumer electronics, appliances, vehicles, construction materials. If local businesses pass on higher costs to consumers, the Federation could see inflationary pressure rise in the medium term.
On the flip side, he suggested that a surplus of agricultural goods in U.S. markets could stabilize or lower food prices in the region.
If we were to consider that if the U.S. were to flood the Caribbean markets with surplus agricultural products due to lost exports to Mexico, Canada, China, food price inflation might remain stable or even decline. So you have both sides of the coin, right? Where inflation could either go up or down depending on really what tends to happen.
The discussion of regional inflation dynamics continued on the March 5th, 2025 episode of ECCB Connects, a program by the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, ECCB. Director Shermalan Kirby from the Corporate Relations Department highlighted the importance of public understanding about inflation, deflation, and disinflation. Economist Kevin Woods from ECCB's Research, Statistics and Data Analytics Department explained that price trends largely influence inflation rates in imported goods in major trading partners.
We are small, open economies that rely heavily on imports. So to a great extent, the inflationary pressures that we face are generally imported from our major trading partners.
Emphasizing how inflationary pressures from the US and other developed markets transfer directly to local economies. Fortunately, Woods explained, the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union ECCU typically enjoys favorable rates of inflation compared to higher rates in Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, and Barbados. Regional governments, however, have not been passive. According to Woods, efforts to cushion the impact of inflation have included social transfers to vulnerable populations via vouchers, direct cash assistance, and subsidies on staple goods.
Sometimes it is in giving them a voucher that they could purchase certain goods. Sometimes it's an electronic transfer to their bank accounts in order to help them to do that. What governments have also done as well, apart from the social transfers, is that they have set prices on basic items which should go no higher. You could think of things like sugar, corn, some of rice, some of these staples, so that the poor and vulnerable don't have to face a rapid escalation in the prices of these necessary things.
These interventions aim to mitigate the elevated cost of living, especially for items deemed necessary for everyday life, while fostering economic stability for lower-income households. Nonetheless, the distinction between inflation, disinflation, and deflation remain crucial for public understanding. As Woods explained, disinflation, the slowing rate of price increases, does not translate into falling prices, deflation. If the price for milk is now $7, with the decrease in inflation, it would not go to $6 or $5.
No, because it is still inflation. However, if you have a scenario where you have deflation, that's different. So with deflation, prices actually fall. So a gallon of milk will be cheaper in, say, 2025 compared to 2024. Okay? But that usually is not a phenomenon or an event that takes place for an extended period of time. Because if it does, that also has some detrimental impacts on the economy. And the reason I say that is, while the thought of deflation is good to a consumer, we'd like to hear that prices are falling. But the problem with that is that when prices are falling, people delay consumption, anticipating that the price will be lower in the future. And so what happens is that economic activity almost grinds to a halt, because people say, well, I know the price is going to fall, so I am going to wait until later to buy it. And that cycle continues, and it is very difficult to get out of a cycle where prices are falling.
While lower inflation may offer businesses more predictability, inconsistent or volatile inflation rates could disrupt economic activity, particularly for small enterprises already burdened by rising operational costs. Inflation is expected to stabilize or moderate further as global central banks adjust interest rate policies. However, Woods cautioned that this depends heavily on shifting dynamics in the US and global markets.
While the general consensus is that interest rates will moderate and go lower, we will have to see what recent developments result in terms of their inflationary impact.
With the Federation's economy closely tied to international trends, individuals and businesses alike must remain proactive, adapting to the opportunities and challenges arising from volatile global economic conditions. The effects of trade wars, fluctuating inflation rates, and pragmatic policy measures underscore the complex web of influences on the everyday economic realities of St. Kitts and Nevis. While government interventions and favorable monetary policies may provide some stability, the interconnected nature of global markets necessitates vigilant monitoring and informed decision-making both at institutional and individual levels. The construction industry in St. Kitts and Nevis is poised for a significant transformation following the extensive modernization of the government quarry. The investment promises a reliable and affordable supply of high-quality construction materials, streamlining project timelines and bolstering infrastructure development throughout the Federation. The upgrades aim to address past inefficiencies, ensuring that the construction sector can access necessary raw materials promptly and cost-effectively. Minister of Public Infrastructure, Energy, Utilities, Domestic Transport, ICT and Post, the Honourable Conris Maynard, speaking at the commissioning ceremony on March 4th, 2025, emphasized the transformative impact of the project.
This project marks a pivotal moment in the evolution of our construction sector, and I am pleased to share with you not only the improvements we've made, but also the tangible benefits this upgrade brings to our nation's infrastructure, economy, and future growth. Today, we proudly announce and provide to you the additional new state-of-the-art machinery, and the quarry is now set to revolutionize our construction sector. And today, we are pleased to share that we have now commissioned 3 other critical pieces of equipment: the secondary crusher and the screening plant.
The modernization initiative, which follows the primary crusher upgrade in August of the previous year, includes the addition of state-of-the-art equipment such as a secondary crusher, a screen, and a rockback truck with an excavator slated to arrive soon. Minister Maynard elaborated on the anticipated surge in production via social media on March 4th, 2025. Quote, "This significant investment will transform our construction sector, ensuring that we produce high-quality materials efficiently and at a lower cost. The increased capacity is expected to significantly reduce the nation's reliance on imported materials, thereby cutting costs and prompting long-term sustainability. The increased output of the quarry is expected to exceed 300%, according to Minister Maynard.
With these new additions, the quarry's output is set to increase by over 300%. This incredible boost in production capacity will ensure that we can meet the demands of future infrastructure projects, avoid costly delays, and most importantly, reduce construction costs.
This surge in production will support a multitude of ongoing and upcoming projects, including the road developments in Palmetto Point, Newton Ground, St. Paul's, White House, Shadwell, West, South, and Boydsview, the desal plant, MRI building, NHC housing, the new Bastyr High School, the Performing Arts Center, the new JNF Hospital, the Ritz-Carlton, and additional housing developments. The upgrade directly addresses previous inadequacies that have plagued the quarry, causing significant delays and financial setbacks. Minister Maynard underscored the broader implication of this investment. Quote, "This upgrade is more than just machinery. It is an investment in the future of St. Kitts and Nevis. It will create jobs, boost economic growth, and strengthen our ability to execute major projects on time and within budget." End quote. Therefore, modernization is considered essential to ensure that the construction sector has access to the necessary raw materials at competitive prices and in a timely and efficient manner. In regional news, ECCB Governor's leadership questioned, Grenada Broadcasting Network reports.
Grenadian-born Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, ECCB, Timothy Antoine, is coming under intense fire over a decision to proceed with what has been described as a lavish 22 million EC dollar residence in St. Kitts. According to regional reports, the 10,000 square foot mansion, intended as the official residence of the ECCB governor, has ignited widespread criticism amid ongoing economic challenges across the region. Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves of St. Vincent and the Grenadines has been one of the most vocal critics, questioning Mr. Antoine's continued leadership of the ECCB. In a letter to the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union Monetary Council Chairman and Antigua and Barbuda's Prime Minister, Gaston Brown, Gonsalves described the project as an absolute scandal and an unacceptable extravagance. He asserted that such excessive spending is indefensible, particularly when many citizens are struggling with soaring food prices and mounting poverty. This act of excessive spending is an outrage. The ECCU cannot afford a governor who has an appetite for such unaffordable opulence, Gonsalves wrote, highlighting what he called revealed a total lack of sensitivity and prudence on the part of the governor. He further urged the Monetary Council to evaluate whether Antoine's continued leadership is tenable under these circumstances. Acknowledging that the project is too advanced to cancel, Gonzalez proposed alternative solutions, suggesting the ECCB either sell the property to the government of St. Kitts and Nevis or convert it into a luxury tourist accommodation. The controversy has sparked intense debate across the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. The ECCB has remained silent on the issue, with a local office stating they have no comment at this time. All calls to Antoine earlier today for comment have also proven futile. GBN reached out for further comment from the Grenadian government, as the ECCB is a multi-state-owned entity that serves 8 islands in the Eastern Caribbean. However, the Prime Minister was otherwise engaged and unable to comment on this development. Reporting for GBN News, Nisha Paul.
OECS immigration ministers discuss free movement protocols. ABS Antigua has that story.
Regional free movement needs to urgently become a tangible reality. That was the main theme as the Third Council of Ministers Immigration Meeting of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, OECS, opening ceremony is convened Wednesday in Grenada. OECS Director General Dr. Didicus Jules highlights the immediate need.
For too long, whether at the CARICOM or the OECS level, we have spoken about the free movement of our people, but have not made it a reality. And what makes this a historical irony is the fact that within the West Indies Federation, an imperial colonial construct, that free movement was a reality.
The opening discussions focus on enhancing regional integration through comprehensive policies and frameworks that not only support free movement, but also prioritize secure borders. One key piece of legislation presented for ministerial approval was the Contingent Rights Model Bill.
This bill is critical for putting into practice the policy on contingent rights across OECS member states. It ensures that citizens of any OECS protocol member state can enjoy the same rights and opportunities in another protocol member state, such as accessing employment, healthcare, education, and social protection.
Prime Minister of Grenada and outgoing Chairman Dickon Mitchell acknowledges that while some policies have been implemented, others remain unresolved.
Having been approved by the OECS authority since November 2015, protocol member states have made an effort to implement the policy legislatively and administratively. However, to date, some of the policies have been implemented, while others, such as the treatment of third country spouses and dependents, remain outstanding.
Officials also emphasized the importance of completing the implementation of online forms at ports of entry and adopting new technologies to improve border security and enhancing the passenger experience. Shanakisha Francis, ABS News.
We now bring you these international reports.
European leaders pledged on Thursday to stand by Ukraine and spoke of a new era of military preparedness spurred by Russia's invasion and Donald Trump's abandonment of what had once been a U.S. ally in Kiev.
We want a peace through strength. And this is the reason why I present today to the leaders the Rearm Europe plan.
EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at the summit in Brussels and described her vision of rearming Europe and supplying Ukraine with weapons.
It gives the member states possibility to invest in the Ukrainian defense industry or to procure military capabilities that go right away to Ukraine.
We made a strong signal to Ukrainian people, to Ukrainian warriors, to civilians, to all our families. And it's great that we are not alone. We feel it and we know it. Thank you so much for everything.
According to NATO, Washington provided more than 40% of military aid sent to Ukraine last year.
If you didn't have our military equipment, this war would have been over In 2 weeks.
In 3 days. I heard it from Putin. In 3 days.
But President Donald Trump abruptly ended that arms supply following an Oval Office shouting match with Zelensky last week that led to a reversal in American support and stunned American allies. In the days since, that shock has hardened into new resolve, driven by fears that Russia, emboldened by its war in Ukraine, may attack an EU country next, and that Europe cannot rely on the U.S. to come to its aid. In a televised address on the eve of the summit, French President Emmanuel Macron said, quote, "I want to believe that the United States will stand by us, but we have to be ready if that is not the case." And in a sign of the gravity of the moment, Macron said that France was open to discussing extending the protection offered by its nuclear arsenal to its European partners. Moscow said Macron's speech contained notes of what it called, quote, "nuclear blackmail." The French proposal was met with mixed reaction from other nations.
I think it's a very interesting idea, and we see to this proposal with high expectations because, nuclear umbrella would serve as really very serious deterrence towards Russia.
That was Lithuania's President Gitanas Nausėda.
Wir sind in der NATO miteinander verbündet. Dazu gibt es.
German Chancellor Olaf Scholz stressed the need to keep the U.S. involved.
A new travel ban by President Donald Trump could bar people from Afghanistan and Pakistan from entering the U.S. as soon as next week. That's according to 3 sources familiar with the matter, who said the potential ban was based on a government review of countries' security and vetting risks. The move harkens back to Trump's first term, when he banned travelers from 7 majority Muslim nations, a policy that went through several iterations before it was upheld by the Supreme Court in 2018. Former President Joe Biden repealed the ban in 2021, calling it a, quote, "stain on our national conscience." The new ban could affect tens of thousands of Afghans who have been cleared for resettlement in the U.S. as refugees or on special immigrant visas. Many are at risk of Taliban retribution for working with the U.S. during the 20-year war in Afghanistan. Some have been stranded since January 20th, when Trump ordered a 90-day freeze on refugee admissions and foreign aid that funds their flights. The 3 sources, who requested anonymity, said other countries could be on the travel ban list but did not know which ones.
From a U.S. strategic reserve of cryptocurrencies to blocked digital wallets on a Russian exchange. This is Crypto Weekly. US President Donald Trump this week announced the names of 5 digital assets he expects to include in a new US strategic reserve of cryptocurrencies. Trump wants to create a stockpile of currencies including Bitcoin, Ether, XRP, Solana and Cardano. A strategic reserve is a stock of a critical resource that can be released at times of crisis. The best-known example is the US Strategic Petroleum Reserve, the world's largest supply of emergency crude oil. Trump's announcement initially gave Bitcoin a boost. On Monday, it surged more than 20% from last week's low. Bitcoin had hit an all-time high of $105,000 earlier this year, but optimism on digital currencies has turned to caution as market participants have awaited more details about Trump's crypto initiative. The token dropped over 17% last month. Bitcoin was trading at over $91,000 on Thursday. US authorities have in recent weeks begun releasing seized Chinese-made equipment used for cryptocurrency mining. That's according to 2 industry executives. Crypto miners are basically souped-up computers with advanced chips, and they compete with one another to solve mathematical puzzles. The process helps build the blockchains underpinning the cryptocurrency world. Russian cryptocurrency exchange Garantex on Thursday said stablecoin Tether had blocked digital wallets on its platform holding more than $28 million. It was forced to suspend operations days after coming under EU sanctions.
You were listening to the WINN FM 98.9 newscast. Our top stories were:
questions mount concerning recent scandal brought forth by St. Vincent and the Grenadines Prime Minister over ECCB governor's residence. St. Kitts and Nevis foresee economic repercussions from U.S. trade wars.
The People's Action Movement calls for an independent investigation into East Coast housing development scheme.
Trade wars escalate inflation concerns in St. Kitts and Nevis and the Caribbean region. Government quarry modernization set to revolutionize construction sector in St. Kitts and Nevis. ECCB governor's leadership questioned. OECS immigration ministers discuss free movement protocols. Internationally, EU leaders talk defense spending surge after US cut Ukraine aid.
Thank you for listening.